people know that gives.
Hey, Sharon.
But we're
Hello.
switching rooms, right?
Well, this
What's
this room is this room is now going to be a workshop on music and environmental education.
Hey, Brand.
Yeah, so just if it helps,
Since I'm the
so Phoebe Barnard will be doing risk resilience and the restoration of ecosystems in the climate, global to local, in the other room. And then this session is Sharon, and I will let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello. Um, I realize some people are going to be leaving and going to the other session, but if you'd like to stay here, and you'd like to learn about how we use music for educating about environmental issues and kind of getting people excited about getting involved in how they can support our local communities and our bioregion, then you're welcome to stay with us here. So I'm Sharon Abreu,
I'm Michael Hurwitz.
and we live on Workus Island. And in 2002, we started a nonprofit called Earthlings Arts-Based Environmental Education, and we've done a lot of stuff, storming the Sound, and worked with Friends of the San Juans and Zero Waste Washington, and other nonprofits in the area. To raise with Quiat is another one here in San Juan County, that we are working to kind of get concepts out to people that maybe just not generally people are not generally aware of things that are happening, like say stormwater runoff being a problem in our communities, and also to help people kind of navigate through some difficult topics. And like, we're dealing with climate change everywhere. So how can we kind of step up and engage in those challenges in a way that engages more of the public? It's fun and it's educational, and it actually inspires people to take on something that they might otherwise just kind of want to walk away from. So that's what we've been doing all these many years. We've been on Orcas Island together for 22 years, and Michael was actually here before me, too. So, another thing that we want to bring up is that, when we talk about engaging people, we don't always feel confident that we can do that. And so that's one of the things we'd like to give people some kind of confidence in doing that. If you would like to ask us questions or say, well, gee, I'd really like to use music. I'd like to, lead people in singing a song about something that we're dealing with, but I just don't feel confident in doing that. We can kind of help give you some confidence. Anyway, we figured we would just give some examples here of the things you might be able to do. Like, for instance, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we got involved with our local tribes, the local Coast Salish tribes, because what were we doing? We were trying to stop 6 proposals for coal terminals, coal export terminals, all along the western coast of Washington State, including right up here at Cherry Point, just north of Bellingham, which is a sensitive aquatic reserve. And so we started working with the local tribes, and that was just terrific. And we didn't actually coin the phrase or the name or the meme, the thin green line. That I think the Sightline Institute may have started that. But we wrote a song, that we would go singing at all these events. That we are the thin green line, We are the thin green line. We see far beyond our lands. We are the thin green line. And the future of the world is in our hands. Like, yes, we know we have this bioregion here and we want to take care of it. And we also realize that what happens here affects somewhere else, and what happens somewhere else affects us here. If we had allowed if we hadn't been successful in stopping those 6 coal export terminals along the Washington coast here, all of those fossil fuels would have gone over to Asia and been burned there, and then all of the, that pollution and eventually wafts back over here. So it's this thing about just, we want to really celebrate the region we're living in, care for it, and also relate it to people everywhere, that we're just connected. all the oceans are connected. The air is connected. We played at a rally some years back. I guess it was about 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. That was called "Climate Change Knows No Borders," and it took place at the Peace Arch, and it was really interesting. It was just very dramatic. You know, we had a line of people lined up on the Canadian side, within the Peace Arch, in the Peace Arch Park. So there's that's collective area. There's not Canadian, it's not American, but we had a whole line of Canadians and a whole line of Americans set up, speaking out again, that we need a lot more action on climate change. And there's, climate change knows no borders. So you can, anything like that you can sing that will get in people's minds. Because we have music jingles, commercial jingles, and we have hymns, all, major religions have hymns and psalms and things that you sing. And the singing is great just in and of itself, but it can also really help to get the concepts in your head. So if you have memes and you have songs and things that can easily be sung to help people to be aware of where we live, and how things are working here, then they might be right under our feet. We wrote a song for Indian Island, which is this little island right off of East Sound here on Orcas Island. Indian Island is a major marine preserve, and there's a lot of research. This organization here called QIAT does a tremendous amount of research on and around Indian Island to inform us as to how our ecosystem is doing here. And so, we wrote a theme song for Indian Island, and we stole the melody from a well-known song, and it just, it's like part of it goes, Indian Island, so close to our shore, we swim to you or walk the muddy Sound's floor to spend some time learning what you have to say, our old marine classroom here in Fishing Bay. And there's a part that goes, yeah, you teach us how far our influence flows. Help us to see what's right under our toes. Because, it's true. We want to have fun. We want people to laugh and go, yeah, and then say, oh, go home and they're singing this thing. And hopefully that they're, happy about singing it. So whatever part of the region you're in, whatever you're concerned with, whether it's trees or water or the economy, or climate change impacts, whatever it is, if you want to bring more people into it and you want to raise awareness, we highly recommend art and music as ways to do that. So I've had a couple other examples I was thinking of here that you might enjoy. One I was just thinking of. We did Indian Island. Can you not do that right now? So here's a song that was written by a friend of ours who's actually in upstate New York, and it just ties everything in together because we know that everything is connected. So it's called Living Planet, and it goes like, it starts out with peace, and then it goes to justice, and then it goes to the health of Mother Earth. So, if all the world were peaceful now and forevermore, peaceful at the surface and peaceful at the core, all the joy within my heart would be so free to soar. So that's one verse. And each verse is exactly like that, except it changes one word. If all the world were peaceful now, if all the world knew justice now, if all the world knew freedom now. And that's, by the way, something I think we need to have a national discussion on. What does the word freedom mean? And what's the responsibility that comes with freedom, and whose freedom to do what to who and at whose expense. If I do something on my land, well, my freedom, well, what does it do to your land? We don't really think about that. And we have issues here right on Orcas Island that, one person says, well, this is my land and I own it and I want to do this. We have these property rights groups. And it's like, well, you don't live in a bubble, though. What you do affects your neighbors. It affects the marine life that, all the water doesn't stay in one place. It's going right down there into the Salish Sea, right? So how can we do this in ways that's not just getting in people's faces and going, we don't want to do that. We want to actually engage with people and kind of get these messages across in a way that kind of goes in, not just through here, but also goes in through here. Like when I first started hearing about global warming, so this was back like 1999, that's when it hit my radar. Well, it had hit a lot of people's radars before that, right? But it hadn't hit mine. But I was living in New York City. I was educating about water and recycling and food chain. And I started hearing more about this global warming stuff. And I said, I'm like an environmental educator now. I better see if this is something real, if this is something that I should really be concerned about. So I took myself off to a 2-day symposium on global warming at the American Museum of Natural History Center for Biodiversity. And I was like, oh my God, this is horrifying. And then, of course, my next thing was like, well, what can we do about it? What can we do right now? And then I started seeing that we had all of this really good information, but guess what was happening? It was going like this, boing, boing. People were not taking it in. And as I've seen people do presentations on global warming over the years, I've seen that too, where, very well-intentioned people will do a presentation on global warming, but they'll have so much of the bad news, and this is terrible, and this is happening, and this is awful, and it's only going to get worse, and this terrible thing is going to happen, and we can expect, and then people are either they physically have left the room or they have tuned out, they're just psychically numbed out. So I started thinking, well, how can we engage on a heart level around this issue? And how can we do it in a way that doesn't send people just running out of the room? And so that's what we started to do with music. We wrote a piece called Penguins on Thin Ice. That was our first, we did a piece right here on Orcas Island called The Great Climate Caper with local students, 6th and 7th grade students that performed here at our Grange Hall for the wider community. And it had songs in it like penguins on thin ice, we're a little confused. The climate is changing and we're not amused. If there's not humor in it, I'm not going to be able to handle. I know that, so not that it never gets serious, because of course it does, but there's a balance between serious and humor and higher energy level, and between the stuff that's really sobering and hard to take in, and solution-oriented things. I would just balance them throughout. I wouldn't have all the bad news and then save the good news for the end when everybody's like freaked out and gone already, tuned out. So in one of those songs in Penguins on Thin Ice, we have Mama Earth being played by like a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old, going, what do I gotta do to get your attention? What do I gotta do to be heard? What do I gotta do to make you listen? I take action. I'm not much on words. Just having fun with it, but getting a message across. Screaming wind, pounding rain, snow way down south. Don't you think it's insane? Floods 1 minute, droughts the next. Aren't you just a little perplexed? But there's humor in it at the same time. Mama Earth stomping around the stage, and having a little attitude, as we call it in New York. And then there's another song in that show, which was really interesting, because when we first did it, we had 12-year-olds, doing the show. And I thought, well, we don't want to scare these children, We want them to know that there's something to be concerned about. And we want their parents to know that there's something to be concerned about. But you don't want it to make it so, awful that kids are up night having nightmares because of this thing they're learning about or that you're teaching them about. And there's a song in that show called The Balance. It's just a very short little song. And it just goes, how do we find the balance? How do we find the key? Where would you look to find it? I want you to tell me. So it's opening a discussion in this song. It's opening a conversation. Think about the animals, like the cat here who's complaining about being picked up. From the frogs to the whales, and then tell me what you think. Take time and think hard. Think about what life is like beyond your own backyard. And with this little song, one of these 12-year-old girls that was in our production told me she listened to that song before she went to sleep at night. Now, that to me was just so affirming that you could have a song in a show about climate change that's meant for young people to perform and that could actually be so comforting to a child that she would listen to it before she went to sleep at night. So this is, it's just, how can we do this? How can we do this with holding people emotionally through the challenges? I mean, the celebrations are wonderful and we need to have them. We want to have them. But sometimes, there's a lot of tough stuff to navigate. We have a lot of challenges with climate change, with the economy, and how are we gonna keep our energy up through all of that? Well, singing and celebration. We learned this really from Pete Seeger in New York. He was kind of our mentor because of what he was able to do. This was a famous folk singer. He got famous not by being an activist, but he ended up being at the forefront of 4 major social movements in our country's history, starting with the labor movement, and then the civil rights movement, and then the peace movement, and then the environmental movement. And, he himself was living along the Hudson River in New York. And he happened to be reading a book called Great Sloops of the Hudson River, and meanwhile, the Hudson River had become such a sewer. It's this grand river. It's got all this historic significance and all this beauty, but it had become basically a sewer. People were like just tossed their old furniture in it, and it was all but dead. And Pete Seeger happened to be reading this book, Sloops of the Hudson. Hey, why don't we build a replica of a 150-year-old cargo sloop that can sail up and down the river, take 50 people at a time out on the river, teach them the history of the river, teach them the ecology, get them excited about cleaning this up. And it's one of the major success stories. Clearwater was not the only group involved, but it was certainly one of the most active groups involved in making that happen. So it's a big deal. And, we got very inspired by that. Hey, we can use our voices not just in education, but really to engage people, really to inspire people and say, hey, we can do this, So I'm just curious if anybody has anything they would like to ask or comment on. And if you don't, I will continue. We will continue. Okay. Well, let's see, it was lovely again. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Brandon. We should have this open so we can see. Yes. So back in, I guess it was around 2009. This was something that was really a big aha moment for me, because I moved here, I moved to the Pacific Northwest with Michael in 2001. And in 2009, I said, I've been meeting people whose stories need to be heard about climate change and fossil fuel energy and even nuclear energy. I wanted these people's stories to get heard. Again, these are real stories of real living people. Their, hearts, it reaches to the heart because these are stories of real people. They're very powerful. So I decided to put together a show called The Climate Monologues. And so I interviewed these people, made the interviews, painstakingly edited them down into short monologues and wrote a song for each one. So the song really served to help remember the story, to help deepen, the message of the story and the emotional impact of it. And when I did this back in 2010, I started performing in 2010. Well, coal, I had 2 monologues in there about coal in there. They were both stories from people that I had met from West Virginia, and they were about mountaintop removal coal mining, which of course is a big concern in that region. And I thought, well, it's interesting. I got these two stories about coal in there, but coal's not really a concern for us here in the Pacific Northwest, or not in Northwest Washington State. Cascadia is not really, doesn't use that much coal. It's certainly where we are. We use like almost no coal at all, unless there's a drought and we have to make up the difference between like if there's less water power for hydro or whatever. So I thought about that and I said, well, these monologues are just so powerful, though. I'm gonna keep them in because this is really for anybody to hear. It's to what you can relate to the story, even if coal is not a problem for you. But then what happened in 2011 is we started hearing about these Peabody Energy's proposals to build these 6 coal export terminals in Washington State. And all of a sudden, coal was an issue for us. And that's the thing, it's like if something's not an issue, we need to have each other's backs, because something might not be a problem for us today, but it might be tomorrow, And that was a big aha for me. And I think people can relate. We can all relate to, you live in a place that's beautiful. You want to keep it beautiful. You want to keep it clean. You want to keep it forested. And some economic interest comes in. It might even be development. Like we have a problem here in San Juan County. It's like we don't really know how much water is in our water table. We don't. And, we have a problem with not having enough housing, not having enough affordable housing. And then we don't know how many people these islands can really support. How much water do we have? We don't know. So I think that is something that is going to be assessed very soon, but it hasn't been to this point. And there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of certain people pushing for things like that. Well, how is this study going to be done? We can't just keep building and building and building, unless we don't care what happens to the ecosystem. But what happens to the ecosystem is very telling about, that's all our canaries in the mine. Forage fish are our canaries in the mine. Eelgrass is our canary in the mine. All of that. So it's really important to know how much water do we have? Where does it come from? When I turn on my tap, where is that water coming from? Not everybody who lives here even knows where their water comes from. And, maybe it's coming from a well. Maybe it's coming from a lake. Where is it coming from? And when you turn on your faucet, how does that get there? There was a song we wrote years ago. We were doing an environmental education program in New York. And of course, that was an issue there. It's like, you live in New York City, you turn on your water faucet. Where does that water come from? It's the same thing here. So we wrote a little song about water conservation. We took it actually from a song that P. Seeger had written, by the way, which I highly recommend this song. It's a great multicultural celebration of multiculturalism, I guess. It's called All Mixed Up, but we used it to sing about water. So we created a song called So Much Water. The water that we drink doesn't come right from the sink. It's got to travel very far just to get to where we are. And though the earth is mostly water, a huge 75%, most of that is salty water. Fresh water's only 3%. Maybe it's 2 now. 2% is covered in ice. In the Antarctic, where the weather's not nice, and you see that's already changed. So, how much ice is there in the Antarctic now? Less than when we first sang this song, but still, 1% is all we can drink. Not as much as you think. So much water in this world. So much water in this whole world. So much water in this world, but so little for us to drink. So don't let the water drip all night. Turn off the faucet so it's tight. Short showers are better than long. You'll know why if you sing this song. We like to swim, we like to bathe. That's just fine as long as we save. Saving's easy if you just don't waste, so turn off the water when you use your toothpaste. Turn it on just when you rinse. That's how saving water begins. We like fresh water, so do you. So saving water is what we all can do. So much water in this world, so much water in this whole world, so much water in this world, but so little for us to drink. You know, we want to have fun, and we want everybody to have fun, and we want to get things done. Thank you, Margot. Yeah. So anybody can do this. You know, we've been very lucky, you know, that we start off in life as music people, you know, and had our aha moments. That's another thing that's really interested me in telling these stories and singing these songs is when does a person become conscious of what's going on around them or where they are in their ecosystem or their bioregion? You know, what is that moment? Maybe from birth, you know, maybe their parents were conscious and they were just conscious from the minute they popped out of the womb, and they've always felt a strong connection to, you know, their natural surroundings. A lot of times people don't pop out of the womb being, you know, like activists, you know, people who kind of are moved out of their comfort zone, you know, to try to protect the natural area. You know, when I was on the San Juan County CRC, the Charter Review Commission, a couple of years ago, and we were trying to put something in the San Juan County Charter about the rights of nature, and we couldn't do it. We didn't have legal standing. There was no legal standing to put anything about rights of nature in our, you know, our county's constitution. And that's a big concern. And, you know, somebody said, well, trees have no standing, you know, and it's, oh my God, that is true. We need to change that, you know? So, but how do we grow a movement, and how do we energize a movement, and how do we message about these things that are so important to us that we really want to gather, support, and connect around? Let me see. I'm gonna take a look at this for a second here. Yeah. So why do we use music? I mean, like, what's the advantage of doing that? And you know, well, as I said, you know, early on, I said, well, music, you know, it helps you to remember things. That's why we have jingles and hymns and stuff like that. But another thing that music really does, and singing in particular really does, is it gets more oxygen going to your brain, you know, because a lot of us don't actually breathe very well. We don't breathe. We don't take as much oxygen into our lungs as we could. When you sing, you actually take in a lot more oxygen, and that goes through your body and it goes to your brain, and it helps you to think better, and it energizes you. If you want to do a little exercise at home, and you don't have to even sing for that, I got this exercise out of a book called The Roar of Silence. It's called The Roar of Silence, this little book by the same guy. I think, did he write the Mozart? I think he also wrote, well, he wrote another really great, I think it might have been the Mozart Effect. Anyway, if you just sit down somewhere comfortably and you just tune into your body, like, see if you can feel, you know, the pulsing of your heart in your body, in your arms, in your fingers, in your toes. And then, you know, just see what you feel. Can you feel that? You know, can you feel that pulsing through your body in different extremities or whatever? And then just tone. Just pick any tone. Can be on any vowel. Just or or ooh, or any. It doesn't matter. Just any tone, any sound, and just kind of keep doing that. Breathe when you need to. Do that for like a minute or so, and then check back in with your body and see if there's a change in what you feel. I'm curious to see how that happens for you. But for me, it was like, oh my God, my toes are going ba-doom, 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 you know? So just how can we help ourselves to be more vital, while we're doing, activist work for our communities, our bioregion, our water, our animals, our trees, our farms, our schools, whatever. Um, so yes, music can be very inspiring. It can also be cathartic. I mean, that's what the blues is all about. Sometimes you want a catharsis, and I would say don't judge yourself on your musical ability or your voice or whatever. Just just use it. What I tell people who would like to actually sing and don't have the confidence, well, I've been told since I was, you know, 5 that I can't carry a tune or I don't have a good voice. Most of that, 99.9% of that is complete crap, by the way, I just want to say. And singing is the one thing that we get judged on that without having any training or orientation in how to use the voice as a musical instrument. So explain that to me. I mean, I would teach it in kindergarten. I would teach just the basics of singing. And really what the basics of singing is this. Ah. So I would like you all to do that with me right now. Just take a nice breath in and ah. See that right there? That is the essence of singing. It's just having the air carry the sound. That's it. Most of when you actually study singing, most of what you're doing is taking the work that you thought you needed out of it, getting out of the way of it and letting that sound flow, letting the sound ride on the air. And then the other thing is just, I have more space in my, this is my resonator. So if I do a nice yawn with that sigh, the yawn sigh, got a lot of space in your mouth. And when you get a lot of space in your mouth, then you have all of these overtones that can resonate inside your mouth. So you get more tone, you get richer tone by just yawning, basically. Yeah. So that's really the essence of it, And in terms of carrying a tune, a lot of times people think they can't carry a tune because they just don't know that they can. It's like when we speak, when we just talk, we use a very limited range of pitches. So when you start to try to sing, all of a sudden you're going out of that comfortable habitual range of pitches that you're accustomed to hearing resonate inside the bone of your head and your ear, So it can take a while before you really feel confident. Like if this is my talking range is kind of here, but then I go up here and then I go up, then I go up here. It's like, am I hitting that? Where is that? Is that like up, up in the sky somewhere? Where is that? And it can take a while before you really feel confident that the tone you want to produce, that you think you're producing, is the tone you're producing. Like right now I have an 18-year-old student who plays the trombone. And he's wants to train his ear, and so we're working on training his ear and on singing. And he's just a wonderful young man, and I have a feeling he's going to do great things with his life. And I hope he does it with music and singing. There's so many sensitive kids out there, and we were just earlier today at a peace vigil in East Sound. We're having every Sunday morning we're having a peace vigil in East Sound. And we had the opportunity to talk to 2 young people that are they feel so hopeless about the government ever working for the people, about ever stopping these wars, which of course are contributing a lot to the climate crisis and environmental devastation where they're happening, and the climate crisis everywhere. But, if you can, that's one of the things I really want to do is to help young people to have some hope and to be able to at least be able to express how they're feeling in a way that can be connecting to other people. Because I think if we're not connecting to each other, then we really don't have a hope. We need each other, and music and singing and literally resonating together has a lot to do with how we can bring each other together. That was really what Pete Seeger said, was one of the things he used to say was, if there's a human race here in 100 years, music will be part of the reason why. You know, that we feel, and we have to let ourselves feel and then express what we're feeling. And if you can do that through music, as opposed to something destructive, if you can do that with your own voice, that's seems to me to be an ideal way to do that. And then those difficult messages, the more we can get them out with music, and dealing with them in as positive way as we can. I found out because I joined a group online that there's a group called the JFK Peace Speech Committee. This is a group out of Massachusetts, Peace Action. And of course, we're all connected on the internet. And this group is trying to raise awareness about a speech that John F. Kennedy gave in Washington, D.C. at American University. It was a commencement address on June 10th, 1963. So this was 60 years ago this year. And the speech had a lot to do with how Kennedy changed his mind after the Cuban Missile Crisis, realizing how close we came to nuclear war and how devastating a nuclear war would be for the whole planet. And he gave this speech, and what I'm doing a lot nowadays is, relating peace to climate change and environment, because they are all very much impacting each other. And so I wrote a choral work for peace for this speech, and I really highly recommend everybody listen to it, because nuclear war is still a big problem here. It's still a big threat, as much as it was 60 years ago. Maybe even more so now than when Kennedy was actually talking with Khrushchev. It's so relevant 60 years later. I understand why young people just don't have any hope, and I just want to wrap my arms around all of them. But yeah, we still have a nuclear threat. Every jet, every tank, every bomb. Oh, I did that accidentally. See, when you do this, it brings up a thumbs up thing. I can actually make other things happen. I don't know if you know this about Zoom, by the way, but I could probably make balloons go if I do this.
And I'll just say, if you're
Anyway, that's
if you're
beside the point, but-
if you're interested in that JFK
yeah.
piece that Sharon wrote, go to earthlings.com. We'll put a link in
We'll put a link
in the chat,
I don't see
and
it,
then
so-
go to video, and it's the very first video on that page is a video of that performance.
Yeah. Another thing that we're doing now, Michael wrote a book recently about his dad. His father, this is Michael Hurwicz. His father was Leonid Hurwicz. He won a Nobel Prize in economics in 2007, and he he escaped the Nazis. He was a Polish Jew who escaped the Nazis. And what we realized when Mike was writing this book about his dad and his work in economics, what the heck was that about? There's the thumbs up again. He realized that there was an overarching theme in his dad's work, which was basically developing what's called mechanism design and using game theory in economics. And the main thrust of this was, you don't start off with an assumption, you start off with the goal. You start off with the goal that you want to reach. What are you doing? You're distracting me.
I'm putting the
Okay.
earthlings.com.
He's trying to be helpful.
JFK thing.
Anyway, we wrote some songs around that too, because the main theme is seeing through another person's eyes. We realized in the stories about how Mike's dad got out of Europe during World War II, and then how he developed his theory of economics to actually help society and actually help the world to take care of everyone's needs, that a lot of what he was doing was looking through another person's eyes. And so we wrote a song about that, just about looking through another's eyes. And what better message could we have in our world today, when so many people are so stressed and feeling scared about so many things, and just kind of trying to, we're kind of, a lot of us are in survival mode, and that's not really where we want to be. Right? We want to be in a more thriving situation. We've written some songs just to raise awareness about things going on here. Mike wrote a song about the acidification of our oceans, and stole the melody from that too.
I forget where I stole that. Oh, I know. I stole that. Remember that old Roger Miller song, King of the Road? Well, mine goes, acidification of the ocean is a problem cause calcification of shells and corals can get messed up. Yeah, 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 yeah. Shells and corals can get messed up.
Hey, let me tell you about a little clam.
Just want to grow to be a man clam. But the ocean chemistry, just too much acidity. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Just too much acidity. Oh, the tale's sad to tell. Just want to grow a little shell now. Because, I mean, it's a heavy topic. But then we go into a solution, right? Kind of a solution, right? Let me tell you what we can do.
Transition
off of fossil fuels. So, getting messaging out there. We did, I actually wrote some songs for Zero Waste Washington before COVID, they were doing a program in the schools about zero waste. The kids didn't know what goes in recycling. If you put something in compost and you put it in compost with a little plastic label on the skin of a piece of fruit or banana or whatever, that it's no longer compostable. So we had messaging around what to do with containers. Make sure you take those little labels off your orange skin before you put it in the compost and stuff like that. Just fun, really fun, goofy things that totally get a message across, and holding people emotionally at the same time. We wrote a song for the Salish Sea because we really want to protect this bioregion. Do you want to do that, the Salish Sea one? A little bit of that?
Which one is
and
that?
And it's a kind of song where, it's call and response, So we go, oh, the Salish Sea, oh, the Salish Sea, it is a beautiful sea, it is a beautiful sea. Oh, the Salish Sea, oh, the Salish Sea, it's a beautiful sea, it's a beautiful sea. And then we get into the, she's got the guitar.
Oh, wait, do we
Yeah,
have
we're on, yep.
Oh, Salish Sea, it is a beautiful sea. Oh, the Salish Sea.
Oh, the Salish Sea.
It is a beautiful sea.
It's a beautiful sea.
Oh, the Salish Sea is a beautiful sea. I really do believe that that's the way that it's supposed to be.
Fish and the birds, and it goes on. The fish and the birds, and you and me. Oh, the fish and the birds, and you and me. Oh, the fish and the birds, and you and me. Then we do the same part that we've done on every verse.
I really do believe that that's the way that it's supposed to be.
So like that, Stuff that you can do call and response to people. Doesn't have to be a complicated melody. It can be a melody to a well-known song. We do advise, if you can, if you're taking a melody of a song that you know and writing new words to it, that just try to use songs as much as you can that are in the public domain. And there's tons of songs that are in the public domain. You probably wouldn't have a problem if you chose a song that's not in the public domain. I don't think somebody's going to come and sue you for using a song for, raising awareness about a bioregion. Frankly, I do not. But if you want to be absolutely sure that nobody's feathers are going to get ruffled, then you go and you choose a song in the public domain, which are what copyrighted before a certain year.
Like 1923 or something like that.
Oh, there's different, I don't know if we want to get into copyright law, but I don't think you really need to. But if you take an old song, we've taken things like row, row, row your boat, and twinkle, twinkle, little star, stuff like that. You can take anything and make a song out of it. An easy, simple little song that is just goofy and fun. Let's see if I have another example I was going to use here. Yeah, God, there's so many good songs. One thing that, we've been very concerned about is the salmon, right? And we've been very involved with this movement to get the 4 lower Snake River dams breached so that the Chinook salmon survive, so that the southern resident orcas survive. And we took a song that Woody Guthrie wrote back in, I guess it was in the 30s, Roll on Columbia. And we made it into a song about breaching the 4 lower Snake River dams. You want to give me the, let's see if I can do it here. What key I do this doesn't matter, but. Concrete walls built where the salmon once swam. Since then the salmon have been in a jam. Good luck to the orcas, survive if you can. Breach the 4 Snake River dams. Everybody, breach the 4 lower Snake River dams. Breach those Snake River dams. Remember that salmon don't start out in cans. Breach the 4 Snake River dams. Just like that. Almighty men worked to put power online. It seemed like a real good idea at the time, but with southern residents' lives on the line, we must breach the 4 Snake River dams. We want to have fun with it, but we also want to get the message across. And I wrote a song about Granny. Do you remember Granny was, she was the southern resident orca. J-Pod was believed to be the matriarch of J-Pod, was believed to be 105 years old when she was last seen in October of 2016. And sometime, I think it was probably in 2015, a friend of mine said, would you write a song about Granny? Write a song about what Granny what would Granny say to all of us, And so I wrote the song about Granny, and I'm really thrilled and heartened that like Rosie Caillou James knows this song and she loves it, and that's really, really affirming and honoring to me. Would you mind going back to the other screen? So we'll just do a little bit of that for you. And we can get you any of these songs you want to use. We're happy to support you in any way that we can. What would Granny say to her children? What would she need them to know? She'd say, look both ways before you go, and don't forget, I love you so. What would Granny say to her children? And her great-grandchildren too. More than a century living in the sea, she's learned a thing or two. What would Granny say? Travel in troubled waters. What would Granny say to all our sons and daughters? What would Granny say to her children? Oh, the stories she could tell of seas that filled with salmon before the tankers roared and the huge nets fell. She described the changing shoreline, how cold the water used to be, of that blob along the coastline, and of blubber filled with PCBs. The matriarch of J-Pod, beloved orca tribe, how did she survive so long to birth and guide and thrive? What would Granny say? Think about that. She'd tell them of the borders only human beings can see, how she fought when she was captured, and how lucky they are to be free. Thank you. She'd tell them all the things she'd seen back when the waters were pristine. She'd tell them always be aware, and above all else, Be kind and share. What would Granny say? Travel in troubled waters. What would Granny say? Navigating crowded corridors. Think about all those tankers going through the Salish Sea, through all those narrow channels, through the straits. She'd tell them of her journeys, 100 miles a day. Some days you'll have too much to eat. Some days there won't be any meat. She'd tell them how the notch got in the trailing edge of her dorsal fin. How before the ship Titanic sailed, she was slapping waves with her mighty tail. The guiding light of her family, California to the Salish Sea. She would guide us if we let her, but will we let her? What would Granny say to you and me if she had the opportunity? She'd say, please save the Salish Sea for the fish, the birds, the seals, the whales, and for all humanity. What would Granny say? What would Granny say? It was such a gift for somebody to ask me what would Granny say, because I'd been wanting to write a song about the orcas, and just hadn't been doing it. And so that was like, for me, it's like to think about, well, what would Granny say to us? It was just so much fun to think about, and then just to be able to share these thoughts about what Granny would say. You could write your own song about what Granny would say, we just lost Tokite. That was heart-wrenching, absolutely heart-wrenching for those of us, that were trying so hard to get this captured southern resident orca back to the Salish Sea before she died. And she died. And a lot of people are grieving about that. We wrote a little song to do it at memorials. We did a memorial on orcas last week. We're going to be doing another memorial on San Juan Island next Sunday for Tokitaia and for Ken Balcom, who passed away this year. So we need to allow ourselves to grieve, and doing that together can be really, really helpful. And then we get back up and we keep going, and we help each other. And that's really what it is, because we have hearts that really care. They're tender. We need to take care of them. And music really helps us to do that. In addition to helping our brain, because we're getting more oxygen going there. Yeah. So I guess we got about 5 minutes left. Does anybody want to say anything or share anything? Feel free to get in touch with us. I'm going to put my, yes, thank you, Margot. I'm going to put our, info here. Let's see, here's my email in here. If you want to get in touch, because we'd love to support you in, anything that could go along the line. In fact, I was thinking, what if we, in New York years ago, when they were trying to shut down this Indian Point nuclear power plant, they had a whole bunch of musicians record a CD called Kiss Your Ass Goodbye. Because this nuclear plant is built on an earthquake fault, just like, what, a few miles from New York City, just a tiny little bit upriver from where 9 million people live. So I was thinking, what if we did a CD about Cascadia, with having a whole bunch of different artists and each record their own song? Margot, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think music is so critical to healing, to expression, the things that we can't verbalize quite through words. I think music is actually a way, even if it contains words, it's containing it on a whole different level of emotion and ability to communicate. And, I think something like whale, grieving for a beautiful whale is something that only music can express. And so I just wanted to thank you. And also, I think it's, you really remind me of the incredible lineage that we have of protest music, that I think is really very interesting, how kind of in today's day and age, it's a little bit different. The distribution channels, sometimes you could say it's harder to be heard. But I wonder
yeah,
if,
with all the
yeah, streaming and all of this. But at the same time, I wonder if maybe just like everything, like energy production and food production, trying to take a hyper local approach to music could be a good thing for us to learn how to enjoy ourselves and entertain ourselves with music, because I think that's something that our society has kind of lost, a lot. And a lot of, indigenous cultures or other cultures, keep a little bit more of that alive, I think, or a lot more.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so
But
trying
they have to
to,
struggle to do that too, a lot of times. They have to
absolutely,
struggle to keep it.
but
Yeah.
rekindle the concept of us feeling confident enough in our own voices in communities to actually entertain one another. I think it's hard to do, but it's really got me thinking about that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, it's a great honor and a pleasure for us to be here and sharing this with you folks. And thanks for being with us, because we know that you could have been many other places today, even in this conference. So
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, and uh, yeah, just don't be afraid just to sing. And to you don't even have to sing, like, you can get your keys and shake them, and get yourself a little chicken shaker or whatever you use. There's a whole bunch of, like, wood blocks and sticks and percussion and stuff you can get people involved in that they don't even have to open their mouths, and you get kids involved. And there's a great nonprofit called Bash the Trash, which, like, uses all kinds of stuff that you would recycle or throw away to make percussion instruments. It's just great. And we lose, I get depressed, and I'm very grateful that I can pull myself out of depression and hopelessness. And I really want to do that for a lot more young people, because I see them feeling so hopeless. Yeah. Another thing that Pete Seeger said, in addition to, saying that, like, if there's a human race here 100 years from now, music will be part of the reason why. But he also said that if there's a human race here 100 years from now, it'll be all of the little things done by millions and millions of people. Each one of us really does matter. We really do count. Our contribution is really important.
I'm trying to remember that. He wrote this song, something like, "When I sing with younger folks,
Oh, yeah.
I will never give up hope."
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
What song was that?
Ah,
Can't remember
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Tom does it. Tom Rawson sings that song a lot. He's another local, wonderful environmental musician here. Anyway, I think we're just about up with our time here, and I want to thank you again for being here.
Yes.
And please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. I put my email in the chat there. Let's see. We got 1 minute left. Let's go up with the song. Solar Energy Shout by the Banana Slug String Band. Everybody's doing the Solar Energy Shout.
Solar energy.
Everybody's doing the Solar Energy Shout.
Solar energy.
We can do it all day, 'cause we never will run out. Solar energy. Well, that oil is so bad, and that coal, it dirties the air. All that nuclear waste is a chance we better not dare. Thank you. So now is the hour. Sun power is everywhere. Everybody, solar energy shout. Everybody's doing the solar energy shout. Solar energy. Everybody's doing the solar energy shout. Solar energy. We can't do it all day, 'cause we never will run out. Solar, and we got, okay, it's 3 o'clock, it's the top of the hour, so let's hear it for our favorite star, the sun. Solar energy. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Oh, God's counting on me.